More of the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. 517 from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates studios. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. A lot of Sixers talk today as they got the third overall pick in the draft lottery last night, and we're getting ready for June, and we'll see who the Sixers will pick, and they'll add to this process. Now joining us, of course, does a great job on DerekBodner.com. It's the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, and Derek Bodner is kind enough to hop on board with us right now. Derek, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
My pleasure. I'm doing well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. So you were at Xfinity Live last night for the rights to the Ricky Sanchez podcast draft party. Take me in through all the behind the scenes of that tremendous draft party that they had last night.
I mean, to be honest, it was just incredible. Like, I've never seen a fan-organized event like that have that kind of atmosphere and that kind of crowd. And to have, 3,000 people in a bar like that with kind of like a common goal and to relate to each other, and to there really be no, there was no anger or hostility. Like, I've never seen that many people at a bar all happy. It was really an incredible atmosphere.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You expect something bad to happen, and then it was just an amazing event. And I heard there was a marriage proposal. Do you have any details on this? Like, who gets married at a draft party, or gets engaged at a draft party, I should say?
Well, I mean, there was there's a free ring involved in it. There was one of the sponsors is a jeweler, LL Pavorsky, and he donated a ring, but the condition was that you had to get engaged there.
Wow.
So there were, I think, about 28 couples that came in, basically knowing there was a chance they were going to get engaged, and they picked one randomly, and the engagement happened. It was certainly. It would never work for me. I probably would have gotten a no answer for that. But there were a lot of willing couples, and it was definitely a unique event in that regard.
That's unbelievable. I didn't know those details about it. As Derek Bodner's with us right now. Hey, our poll question today is, who do you want the Sixers to draft? Here's our 4 realistic options, in my opinion. Josh Jackson, Jason Tatum, De'Aaron Fox, or Malik Monk. Your answer to that is?
I mean, my answer is Josh Jackson, and I worry about his shot quite a bit, and that makes him a tough fit with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. But I also think the rest of his game is good enough that I'm willing to take that chance. I'm not willing to necessarily take a lesser talent like Malik Monk that I think is really the best fit there. I like Jackson quite a bit. I think his all-around game is really strong. I think if you're looking at him, there's only one really major weakness, and that is shooting, and that is an important one. But I do think he is the third best talent in this draft.
Is there a possibility, because a lot of fans love Malik Monk, but they're not comfortable with drafting him at number 3, just something like you were just saying. Is there a possibility the Sixers may trade back to try to get Monk?
I mean, I suppose it's possible. I think the Kings are probably the interesting team to look at. They obviously moved up from 8th to 5th because they swapped picks with the Sixers. So they're a little stronger of a position to bargain like that. Maybe they're targeting somebody that they know they could get at 3. Could be a possibility. I'm not sure whether or not, you would find a common ground there. But certainly I think there's a possibility. I'm just not sure how likely it is.
And if you want to talk about some other possible innuendo and some rumors that are going around, there's a possibility maybe they trade this pick and another future pick for a proven talent already. People have been advocating for that going back to the trade deadline this past year, and maybe you'll hear that more talk coming up in the next month or so. If there was a deal for Paul George or maybe even Jimmy Butler, what do you think the asking price would be to try to get one of those 2 players to Philadelphia?
Sure, and I mean, look, Brian Colangelo isn't really shy about saying that he will listen to any and all scenarios, and I think there's a case to be made that, look, the Sixers draft pick is more valuable now than it was 24 hours ago. They moved up in the draft. I think their most likely outcome would have been 5th. Now other teams know that you have a real chance of being able to get Josh Jackson with that pick, so I think other teams will value it more than they did yesterday. By the same token, there is that fit concern with Jackson because of his shooting that maybe would give the Sixers pause. So if the value of that pick rose league-wide and maybe didn't necessarily rise from the Sixers, you could see maybe something being a little more likely. I could see Colangelo having interest in improving the club in a big way, and I could certainly see him entertaining that offer. Now, what's it going to take? I think a lot of that's going to come down to whether or not Paul George makes that All-NBA, one of those All-NBA squads later on this month because of that designated player exception, and how willing teams, even if he doesn't make it, he can still make it next year. How willing are you to gamble on him and to call his bluff when he says, look, there's no chance I'm going to sign with you because I want to keep that DPE money available? It all comes down to whether or not another team is really willing to call that bluff, drive up his price, and push the Pacers into a position of leverage. It's really a fascinating wrinkle in the CBA, something that didn't exist before. What's it ultimately going to take? I'm not entirely sure I could tell you, but I do think the Sixers would have interest, and I think the Sixers have a lot of assets at their disposal.
You look at Josh Jackson. Let's go that it is Josh Jackson at number 3 for the Sixers. You add him in with Ben Simmons, Embiid, and Saric. That's a very tall and athletic lineup. Just how about that element added in Jackson into the fold with what they already have?
Yeah, I mean, Brett Brown and Brian Colangelo have kind of been on two. They've really been driving home 2 points, and one of them is that they want shooting and they want a player that fits, which again would suggest someone like Malik Monk. But they also want versatility, which is pretty much the opposite of Malik Monk. But it is something that that Josh Jackson really thrives with. He can defend 2, maybe even 3 spots defensively. He can push the ball. He can cut off the ball. He can make passes and decisions with the ball. He really does a lot of things well. And certainly, I mean, when you look at that and you look at Covington, you look at Jackson, and you look at Simmons, with Embiid behind them, that could really be the foundations of a very good defensive team. And I think when I'm looking at it and I say Josh Jackson at 3 is who I would take, I think that's a very big part of it.
We're talking with Derek Bodner. Derek, let me get 2 percentage questions answered from you. Chances that Kyle Lowry next year is a Philadelphia 76er?
Well, I think it's probably easier to answer what is the chance that the Sixers will offer Kyle Lowry a contract. And I think that rose quite a bit yesterday because you're not going to walk away likely with either Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball. You know, I think that chance is high. What is high? Is that 60%? Is that 70%? I'm not sure. I do think there's a pretty good chance they offer him a contract. Whether he accepts it is probably going to come down to whether or not Toronto is willing to offer him that 5th year. And that I'm not entirely sure what the odds of that are. I'm not necessarily in the Raptors front office in that regard. But I think it's a very real possibility, especially because of what happened last night.
And a lot of things still need to unfold, but a lot of people next year even heard Embiid talk about it last night, and he used the word playoff. What's the possibility in your eyes that the Sixers next year could be an 8th seed, could be a 7th seed in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, he also talked about chasing LeBron James, and,
yes.
and you love his optimism, but slow down a little bit, big man. Look, I think when Embiid was on the court, they were a pretty good team, and the fact that when he was on the court, they were the best defensive team in the league. It really does say something. And if you go out and you get a Kyle Lowry, you add in Ben Simmons, you add in Josh Jackson, to that core that Embiid really already established, that identity that Embiid established defensively, if he's healthy, 60, 65, 70 games, I think they can make the playoffs. I don't think that's crazy at all, especially with some of the turmoil that's going on with teams like the Pacers and the Bulls. Whether he's going to be healthy, I have no real way to predict that. And I think he is a very big key. I think when you take him away, they lose that defensive identity. They have a lot of young players who, while talented and will show you flashes, they'll struggle to make that kind of consistent impact. I think he really is the key. If he's healthy, I think that's a very realistic goal.
Last night, I thought this was one of the biggest shocks I've ever seen, and I thought the pick swap was a shock. But you have Josh Harris giving words of extolment to the man he used to employ in Sam Hinkie, the mastermind behind the process. Just when you heard that, when you read it actually, just what was your first thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when you say, like, man, I really loved my ex-girlfriend that I dumped. Like, yeah, maybe you did, but, like, you're the one who told him to go away.
Yep.
I mean, look, last night was a lot of the things that Sam Hinkie really believed in terms of, kind of playing the margins and doing whatever he could to take. If your organizational goal is to get a franchise player, to take a lot of small steps to increase those odds into something more favorable. Last night was really an example of that. 8.6% chance this pick swap happens. A lot of people would disregard that. They didn't. And now you look at it, and yeah, it's only a jump from 5 to 3, but that can sometimes be huge. That can be, if you trust your scouting department, you want them to have as many players available to select from. So you're, reducing luck. You're reducing the chance that player isn't even available to you. You could go out and say, scout Kristaps Porzingis in Spain, come to the conclusion he's a superstar. If you're drafting 5th, it doesn't matter that you got that evaluation right. So these are the kind of moves that he really prided himself in. Knowing, look, any any tactic we take, any rebuilding strategy we go, it's a low percentage chance to get to, contention, to get a championship team. But these are the moves we can take to make maybe incremental increases to those odds. I think last night kind of showed that.
It's just unbelievable, and I wasn't always someone that, praised Sam Hinkie. It took me time to do that, but the situation they're now in with the Kings pick unprotected and the Lakers pick unprotected, it's unbelievable. With all that being said and how much praise he is getting today, do you think he'll be back in the league soon in Sam Hinkie?
Yeah, I think he'll be back in the league. I think he's going to be very selective in his next stop. I think he looks at the Sixers and says, maybe he misjudged the willingness that this ownership group had to kind of face adversity and face the backlash. I think Josh Harris and the ownership group they were very, they did believe that they were willing to go down this route and that they were willing to, tackle that pressure. But I think maybe it was a little bit harder than they thought it was going to be. And I think Sam wants to make sure that he goes to the right ownership group that is going to give him the support that he needs. I don't think he's going to jump necessarily at the first opportunity that comes up. So I think maybe, he might wait a year. He might wait to see what really comes up. His reputation certainly isn't getting hurt by what's going on with the Sixers, so I'm not sure he's going to really jump to the first opportunity, but I do think he will be back relatively soon. I'm not sure if that means this summer, but relatively soon.
Now I'll ask you this, how does Vlade Divac still have a job?
Well, he also got demoted, so I think that probably says something. They've been hiring people to quote-unquote help Divac for quite a while. And really the trade with the Sixers was a real catalyst for that. And the knowledge that he didn't really understand his CBA when he made that deal. He didn't understand, some of the stretch provisions where they could have created cap space without giving up all that they did. There's been pretty big league-wide backlash. I do think it's been shown how many hires they've made in the front office to maybe combat his inexperience.
Who would you rather be, Billy King or Vlade Divac?
I'm guessing Vlade probably has a little more money, so I'll go with him.
And before we let Derek Bodner run from DerekBodner.com, so we know Fultz, we know Ball, and we also know Jackson, three of the top players in this draft. Give me two more players when you look at the top five in your estimation of the players coming up in this year's draft.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one guy I really like Jonathan Isaac out of Florida State. And he probably doesn't project to be as big of an offensive focal point as a lot of the guys that we're talking about, but he might have the most defensive potential in this draft. He's 6'11". He can move his feet on the perimeter like a guard. He can block shots. He can force turnovers. He can really defend the 2, 3, and 4 spots, and maybe even the 5 spot if he fills out physically and gets stronger. I think he is very underrated. I think he's going to really make somebody happy, and he'll fill a role, and I think that's important. The other guy I would say, in that range, I do like Dennis Smith Jr. He's probably the guy that I'm least confident in my evaluation, if for no other reason than NC State was such a bad situation, and one of his real weaknesses is his decision-making, and that's a little bit more pronounced when you're relied upon so much to create offense like he was there. But there are very few players with the kind of 3-level offensive talent that he has and the diversity of his game. He might end up being the second-best offensive guard in the draft. I think he's somebody that you have to really, really look at, try to determine what was the instigating factor in some of his struggles, and really talk to him and get to know what he is as a player and a person.
And lastly, Derek, before we let Derek Bodner run, of course, tell me a little bit about the website. My listeners know you as the man that exposed Brian Colangelo as a liar, but tell me what else they could expect out of DerekBodner.com.
I try to go, I think what I would say is I try to appeal to the basketball nerd crowd. I'm not necessarily as interested in maybe aggregating content or whatnot. But I want to kind of get into a little more of the depth of it. So it's a subscription-based model. Most of the content is free. Some of it is behind a payroll. And I think that's important to kind of separate out ad revenue, which really does drive and change the way that we write, with how I make money. So we're giving it a shot. It's done better than I expected so far, and we'll see where it goes.
Hey, when you're at this draft party last night, because people, I know Spike Eskin calls you, Godner and makes you this godlike figure. How much do people worship you at one of these draft parties last night?
There was some conversations. I probably spent the first 2 hours just talking to fans and getting getting a gauge on how they felt and having a good back and forth. It was a great event for that. Who knows how many of them will end up subscribing, but it was good to get out, and just talk basketball. And I think in this town it's so football focused that just getting out there and talking about this team and talking about hoops, it was a great time.
Love it, Derek. Always appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
There's Derek Bodner, of course, DerekBodner.com. Great insight as always. And that's the feeling right now. Number 3, it's going to be Josh Jackson. I'd be okay if you do draft Malik Monk. I would love to see Monk with this team, with Simmons getting him the basketball. And I just don't think that's going to be the pick at 3. I don't think it's going to be Monk. I think it's going to be Josh Jackson. Then you have a very athletic lineup. You have Simmons. You have Jackson. Then you have Embiid and Saric. And health's going to be the big thing in this. I'm not really concerned about the health of Ben Simmons. I'm more concerned about the health of Joel Embiid. And if Embiid, that's the big if. That's the big domino to fall. And you hope he gets a fortuitous break and not get injured anymore. But if he could stay healthy, this is Sixers team. You're seeing this dream of Sam Hinkie really come to fruition, where you have the 3rd overall pick this year, should be Josh Jackson. Who knows? Maybe something crazy happens and you have ball slip or you have Fultz slip, but I don't see that happening. And then, with that even being said, you have a team that could probably and should compete this year for an 8th or 7th seed in the East. Maybe they bring in Kyle Lowry. I'm not in love with it, but I could see the rationale behind it, and it may be more of a possibility after what did transpire and what really did unfold in front of us last night. And then you're going to continue to get more assets. And maybe you make a trade and you swap and you go get a Jimmy Butler or you get a Paul George. But even if you don't, you have the Lakers pick next year unprotected. I don't see them having this dramatic turnaround. That should be in the top 5 next year. And then the year after that, you get the Kings pick unprotected. And thank you. That's all I have to say, because we usually say thank you, Hinkie, and thank you, Hinkie is right. But thank you, Vlade Divac. What an idiot for making that trade. Unbelievable. You give away an unprotected pick in 2019 when you have nothing. Nothing. Unbelievable. And then the pick swap works. I can't feel better for Sixer fans today, because I've seen you go and get laughed at and get called all these names and go through all this crap, and the pick swap worked last night. Who would have thought? And then you get the point. Hey, call up Sacramento today. Let's call up a Sacramento radio station. I want to talk to someone from Sacramento today, and I want to see how crappy they feel, because they got 2 picks last night, but it doesn't matter. You lost out on a pick swap, and you have no future. And in 2019, you're dead. You're dead. Because guess what? The Sixers have your pick. Sam Hinkie, I may have criticized you in the past, but I will genuflect to you right now. I am bowing down to you on air right now, because what you did is absolutely brilliant. It took a long time. It took a lot of patience, but it will work. As long as they stay healthy, it will work, because they have so much talent. It's unbelievable.
Trust the process.
Yes, trust the process is right. Play it again.
Trust the process.
Play it again.
Trust the process.
And play it again.
Trust the process.
The Sixers are in a good spot. So thank you, Sam Hinkie. Thank you, Vlade Divac. And also, let's laugh at Billy King, because what an idiot that man is. And I was someone that even said, when they made that move with the Nets, I looked at that trade and I understood it. I did. And they had a 2-year window. But after 1 year, that thing was done. And look how much he gave up. And, we're praising Sam Hinkie. Imagine what they're saying in Boston right now about Danny Ainge. You're the number 1 seed. You're in the Eastern Conference Final. We know you're not going to beat the Cavs. But you're still a 1 seed. You have a young roster. And you quickly, in a snap of a finger, turn that team around. And, oh, yeah, coming off a 1 seed season and an Eastern Conference Final trip, you have the number 1 overall pick. And if you take Fultz, that's great. Or maybe you flip it and get someone back. And you get a Paul George or a Jimmy Butler. Because you need another star there. You do. 609-919-9200. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920, the Jersey. 5:36 is the time from the Princeton Orthopedic Associates Studios. We'll take a break. We're coming on back. We'll wrap up shop right after this. We'll get into LeGarrette Blount. He's now a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll give you a Mets update. Get into the Phils as they lost last night 5-1, and the Yanks. We'll get into them as well. And we'll also preview the Eastern Conference Final and wrap up because the Western Conference Final's over. And I know it's only 2-0. It's a 2-0 hole, but that thing's over. We'll talk about that next, coming up on the Zach Gelb Show.